Sienna had translated for Kang Jae-hoon for 3 years, long enough to know that when he went quiet, someone was about to die, long enough to read the danger in his silences better than his words. So when he announced his engagement, legitimizing his empire with a politician's daughter, Sienna knew it was time to leave. She handed in her resignation like a professional. He shook her hand like a gentleman. She should have known better. Because 3 days later, the news reported her death. Car explosion, no survivors, closed casket. Except Sienna wasn't dead. She was standing in front of a mirror, staring at a face that was still hers, holding an ID with a name she'd never heard before, while Jae-hoon stood behind her and said the 4 words that shattered everything. "You were never leaving me." If you're already wondering how deep this goes, hit that subscribe button because what comes next will make you question everything you think you know about love and obsession. Drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. I need to know who's ready for this darkness. Now, let's dive in. Sienna Carter didn't plan to work for the Korean Mafia. But when you're a Black American woman fluent in Korean, English, and Mandarin, living in Seoul with student debt that could sink a ship, you take the jobs that pay. And the job that paid better than anything else, translating for Kang Jae-hoon. Now here's what no one tells you about working for dangerous men. It's not the violence that gets under your skin. It's the intimacy. Because when you're someone's voice, you don't just translate their words. You translate their power, their threats, their secrets. Which is exactly what made Sienna's first meeting with Jae-hoon so dangerous. 3 years ago, hotel conference room, leather and expensive cologne. Jae-hoon was younger than she expected, mid-30s, sharp jawline, eyes that could calculate your worth in seconds. His English was passable, but passable didn't close million-dollar deals. So he needed her. "Miss Carter," he'd said in Korean, his voice smooth and cold. "I'm told you're discreet." "I'm told you pay well," she'd replied in the same language. He smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. "Then we'll get along perfectly." Except they wouldn't, because perfect wasn't in the cards for them at all. That first year, Sienna convinced herself it was just a job. She sat beside Jae-hoon in rooms where men spoke in codes and threats, never flinched when he ordered someone's debt collected, never hesitated when he smiled at a rival while promising consequences. She became a tool without judgment. But here, where the problem started. Because being someone's voice means understanding them. She knew when Jae-hoon was bluffing, his fingers tapped the table. She knew when violence was coming, always 3 seconds of silence first. She knew the exact pause before he made decisions that ruined lives. So when she realized Jae-hoon trusted her more than his own men, she should have quit immediately. But she didn't. Because they feared him, she understood him. And understanding someone dangerous doesn't make you safe. It makes you his accomplice. Which meant every night, Sienna went home telling herself the same lie. Tomorrow I'll quit. Tomorrow I'll find different work. But tomorrow never came. Because the money was good. Because the work was steady. And because, if she was brutally honest, there was something addictive about being the only person in his world who wasn't afraid of him. So let me ask you something. If you were making more money than you'd ever seen, would you walk away just because the work was morally gray? Most people say yes. Most people are lying. Because Sienna stayed, and that decision would destroy her life. Now wait a second. This next part is critical to understand. Because what happened with the other women revealed everything about what Jae-hoon would eventually do to Sienna. Jae-hoon changed women like he changed suits. Models, actresses, socialites, women who draped themselves over him at galas, who waited in his penthouse, who showed up wearing designer dresses and desperation. They never lasted more than a few weeks. But here, what Sienna didn't realize at the time. While these women were fighting for his attention, she was doing the opposite. When his flavor of the week tried to make small talk in the lobby, Sienna was polite but distant. When his associates joked about his collection, she didn't react. When he showed up smelling like someone else's perfume, she'd simply open her laptop. What's on the agenda today? Business, always business. So Sienna thought she was protecting herself by staying professional. She was wrong. because her indifference was driving him insane. Think about it, every other woman wanted something from him. His money, his power, his attention. But Sienna, she wanted her paycheck and nothing else. Which made her the only woman he couldn't have. And that made her unforgettable. "You're very disciplined, Miss Carter," Jae-hoon said once, after a gala where she'd watched him leave with an actress whose face was on every billboard in Seoul. "I'm very employed, Mr. Kang," she'd replied. "I'd like to keep it that way." He laughed, actually laughed. And that's when everything changed. Because here's what you need to understand about year 2. Jae-hoon stopped bringing women to work events, stopped taking their calls during meetings, stopped leaving with them after galas. But he didn't stop because he'd lost interest in women. He stopped because he'd found the one he actually wanted. So instead of rotating through models and actresses, Jae-hoon started staying late at the office, started asking Sienna to review contracts that didn't need translation, started finding excuses to keep her there, one more meeting, one more briefing, one more question that could have waited. Which meant the walls Sienna had built were crumbling. "Don't you have somewhere to be?" she asked one night at 11 p.m., packing her laptop. "No," Jae-hoon said, loosening his tie. "Do you?" "Yes, my bed." "You could stay." The way he said it made her freeze. Not a command, not a proposition, just an offer. Quiet, almost vulnerable. And for the first time in 2 years, Sienna actually looked at him. Saw the exhaustion in his eyes, the loneliness he carried like armor, the weight of being feared but never known. She almost said yes. Almost. "Good night, Mr. Kang," she said, and walked out before she could make a mistake. But the mistake was already happening. Because now Sienna started noticing things she shouldn't. How Jae-hoon's hand lingered when he passed her documents, how his eyes tracked her across rooms, how he requested her presence even when translation wasn't needed. So the boundaries were blurring. And when boundaries blur with dangerous men, that's when you become theirs. One night after a brutal negotiation, Jae-hoon poured them both whiskey. Sienna should have declined. She didn't. Because somewhere in 3 years, professional had become personal. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked quietly. "The things you've done?" Jae-hoon was silent. Then, every day. She looked up, surprised. "But regret doesn't change anything," he continued. "It just makes you weak, and weakness gets you killed. So you just shut it off, the guilt." "I compartmentalize. Survival requires it." "That sounds lonely." His eyes met hers, and for just a moment she saw past the monster. "It is," he said quietly, "but lonely is safer than trusting the wrong person. Have you ever trusted anyone? I'm trusting you right now. So here's my question. When does professional intimacy cross into something dangerous? When you understand someone's silences, when you stop being afraid, or when you realize the loneliness in their eyes mirrors your own." Because Sienna had crossed that line, and she was about to pay for it. Year 3 was when everything fell apart. Chinese syndicate meeting, high stakes, negotiation gone south, threats exchanged, weapons mentioned. Sienna kept translating with clinical precision. Then the Chinese leader made a fatal mistake. He looked at Sienna and said something in Mandarin that Jae-hoon wasn't supposed to understand. Something crude about what he'd do to Jae-hoon's pretty little translator if the deal went south. Now wait, this moment is critical because of what happened next. Sienna's jaw tightened, but she didn't translate it. Jae-hoon noticed. "Miss Carter," he said in Korean, voice like ice. "What did he say?" "Nothing important." "Translate it." She met his eyes, saw something dark there, something possessive. "He made a comment about me. It's not relevant to the negotiation." Jae-hoon went still, that dangerous stillness that meant someone was about to die. He stood slowly, buttoned his jacket, and switched to Mandarin, flawless, fluent Mandarin Sienna didn't know he spoke. "If you ever look at her again," Jae-hoon said, soft and lethal, "I will remove your eyes and send them to your wife in a jewelry box." Silence. And Sienna realized something that made her stomach drop. Jae-hoon had understood every word of every meeting she'd ever translated. He didn't need her for language. He needed her because he wanted her there. Which meant everything she thought she knew was wrong. After that meeting, Jae-hoon stopped pretending. And that's when Sienna realized she was in serious trouble. Because he started showing up at her favorite coffee shop on Saturday mornings. Started sending cars instead of letting her take the subway. Started making it clear to everyone in his world that she wasn't just his translator anymore. She was his. "You need to stop," Sienna told him one night after he'd sent away a business associate who'd looked at her too long. "Stop what?" "This, whatever this is, people are starting to talk." "Let them talk." "I don't want to be one of your women, Jae-hoon." She used his first name without thinking, without permission. He smiled. "You're not." "Then what am I?" "Mine." Now here's what made that moment so terrifying. It wasn't a question. It wasn't a proposition. It was a statement of fact, like he'd already decided and her opinion didn't matter. "I'm your employee," Sienna said firmly, even as her heart hammered. "That's all." "If that's what you need to believe." "It's the truth." "The truth," Jae-hoon said quietly, stepping closer, "is that you stopped being just my employee the moment you chose not to translate that man's threat." Sienna's breath caught. "The moment you protected me instead of maintaining neutrality," he continued. "Don't lie to yourself, Sienna. You're better than that." And that's when she knew she had to leave. Because he was right. Somewhere along the way, she'd stopped being neutral, started caring, started noticing the difference between his business voice and his real voice, started understanding when he was tired, worried, carrying weight he wouldn't share. She'd become complicit, not just in his business, in whatever this thing was between them. So she did what she should have done 2 years ago. She started planning her escape. Now this is where everything you thought you understood gets flipped upside down. Because Sienna spent 2 weeks quietly preparing, updated her resume, reached out to old contacts, started researching jobs in other cities, maybe Tokyo, maybe back to the States. But she made one critical mistake. She assumed she could leave cleanly, professionally, that Jae-hoon would accept her resignation the way any normal employer would. She forgot she wasn't working for a normal employer. Tuesday morning, Sienna arrived at the office to find Jae-hoon's inner circle gathered in the conference room, his second-in-command, his financial advisor, his lawyer, all wearing the same expression, surprise mixed with calculation. "Miss Carter," Jae-hoon said when she entered. "Perfect timing. I need you to draft a press statement." "For what?" "My engagement." The room went silent. Now wait, this is important to understand. Because Sienna's reaction in this moment revealed everything she'd been lying to herself about. Her pen stilled over her notepad, her chest tightened. The room suddenly felt airless. "Your engagement," she repeated carefully. "To Councilman Park's daughter, Una Park. We're announcing it next week." It was a business move. Sienna knew that immediately. Councilman Park controlled half the building permits in Seoul, had connections to the Justice Department. Marrying his daughter would legitimize Jae-hoon's operations, transform him from crime lord to respectable businessman. It was brilliant, calculated, exactly the move Jae-hoon would make. So why did Sienna feel like someone had punched her in the chest? "Congratulations," she said, voice perfectly professional. "I'll have the statement ready by this afternoon." But here's what she didn't see. Jae-hoon's eyes locked on hers, searching for something, a reaction, a crack in her armor. She gave him nothing. "Thank you, Miss Carter," he said quietly. "That will be all." Sienna lasted 4 more days. 4 days of watching Jae-hoon meet with wedding planners. 4 days of translating conversations about venues and guest lists and political alliances disguised as family unions. So on the 5th day, she typed her resignation letter. "Dear Mr. Kang, please accept this as my formal 2 weeks' notice. It has been an honor to work with you these past 3 years. I'm confident you'll find a replacement who can serve your needs moving forward. Best regards, Sienna Carter." She printed it, signed it, walked into Jae-hoon's office, and made the biggest mistake of her life. She placed the letter on his desk. He looked at it, then at her. "No," he said simply. "I'm not asking permission," Sienna replied. "I'm giving notice 2 weeks, then I'm done." "Why?" "Because it's time." "That's not a reason." "Because you're getting married," Sienna snapped, and immediately regretted it. "Now here's what you need to understand about this moment." Because Jaehoon stood slowly, walked around his desk, stopped inches from her, and smiled. "And that matters to you." His voice was soft, dangerous. "No," Sienna lied, "but it changes things. You'll need someone who can work with your wife. I'm not qualified for that." "You're lying." "I'm being practical." "You're running." Sienna's breath caught, because he was right. She was running from whatever this was, running from the way her stomach dropped when he announced his engagement, running from 3 years of boundaries that felt less like protection and more like prison bars. "Accept my resignation, Mr. Kang," she said quietly. "Please." Jaehoon stared at her for a long moment. Then he smiled. That smile made her blood run cold. 2 weeks, he said, picking up the letter. "If that's what you want." He shook her hand. And Sienna should have known better. Because the next 2 weeks were the strangest of her life. Jaehoon didn't try to change her mind, didn't offer more money, didn't ask her to stay. He simply accepted it. But here, what Sienna didn't know. Acceptance and permission are very different things. So Jaehoon was professional, cordial. He even helped her train her replacement, a young Korean-American man with perfect credentials and none of Sienna's history. "You'll be fine," Sienna told him during training. "Mr. Kang values precision and discretion." "Did you ever get used to it?" the replacement asked. "The things you had to translate." Sienna paused. "You don't get used to it. You just learn to separate the words from the meaning." But that was a lie. She'd never separated anything. She carried every threat, every deal, every cold calculation like stones in her chest. On her last day, Jaehoon called her into his office. "Your final payment," he said, sliding an envelope across the desk, "plus a severance bonus." Sienna opened it. The check was for 6 months' salary. "This is too much." "It's exactly what you earned. 3 years of loyalty deserves compensation." She should have known something was wrong, should have questioned why he was being so generous. But student loans don't care about suspicion. "Thank you," she said. "There's something else." Jaehoon pulled out a small box, velvet, expensive. Sienna's stomach dropped. "Mr. Kang." "It's not what you think." He opened it. Inside was a simple silver bracelet, elegant, understated. "Consider it a thank you for your discretion." It felt like a collar. But Sienna took it anyway, slipped it into her purse. "I appreciate everything you've taught me." "Have I taught you anything, Miss Carter?" "You've taught me that survival requires boundaries." Jaehoon's expression flickered, something almost like sadness. "Then I've taught you wrong." He stood, extended his hand. "Goodbye, Sienna." It was the first time he'd ever used her first name. She shook his hand, felt the warmth of his palm, the strength in his grip. "Goodbye, Jaehoon." She walked out, into the Seoul evening, and for the first time in 3 years she felt like she could breathe. She was free. Or so she thought. Because here, what Sienna didn't know. Freedom is an illusion when someone like Kang Jaehoon decides you belong to him. Sienna spent the weekend apartment hunting. She'd saved enough to move somewhere nicer, maybe Gangnam, maybe out of Seoul entirely. Start fresh. Find work that didn't involve blood money. Sunday night, she treated herself to dinner at her favorite restaurant in Itaewon, ate alone, scrolled through job postings, felt something almost like hope. She didn't notice the black sedan following her home. Monday morning, Sienna's alarm didn't go off. She woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows. Her head was pounding. Her mouth tasted like chemicals. This wasn't her apartment. The room was large, expensive, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking mountains she didn't recognize, furniture that cost more than her yearly salary. Beautiful. Terrifying. Sienna stumbled out of bed, still wearing last night's clothes. Her purse was on the dresser, phone inside. She grabbed it with shaking hands. No signal. She ran to the door, locked from the outside. No, 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 her heart was racing. She pounded on the door. Hello, someone. The lock clicked. The door opened. Jae-hoon stood there, dressed in a casual black sweater, holding coffee. Good morning, Sienna, he said calmly. How are you feeling? She stared at him. Her brain couldn't process what she was seeing. What did you do? Her voice came out broken. I made a decision, Jae-hoon said, stepping inside. You resigned, I accepted, but that doesn't mean you get to leave. You drugged me. Mildly sedated, I needed time to arrange things. WHAT arrangement, Sienna's voice rose to a scream. Where am I? Jae-hoon pulled out his phone, opened a news app, handed it to her. The headline made her knees buckle. American Translator killed in ITAWON car explosion. AUTHORITIES. INVSTGTNG. Below it, her face, her name. Sienna Carter, 29, pronounced dead at the scene. No, Sienna whispered, staring at her own face on the screen. No, this can't be. It's very real, Jae-hoon said quietly, setting the coffee on the dresser. Car explosion, last night. They found your purse, your phone, closed casket funeral scheduled for Friday. Sienna's hands shook so badly she nearly dropped the phone. You killed me. I saved you. By murdering me. By making you disappear. He said it so calmly, like they were discussing the weather. Sienna Carter is dead, and no one will ever look for a dead woman. Now here's what made this moment so twisted. Sienna should have been screaming, fighting, trying to escape. But instead, she found herself asking, why? Because that was the question that mattered. Not how, not what came next. But why would someone fake your death unless there was something worse waiting? Jae-hoon's expression shifted, something almost like relief. Finally, he said quietly, the right question. Then answer it. No. Sienna's rage exploded. You don't get to do this. You don't get to erase my entire life and then play games. I'm not playing games, Jae-hoon interrupted, his voice hard. I'm keeping you alive, but if I tell you why right now, you won't believe me. You'll think I'm manipulating you, lying to justify what I've done. You are manipulating me. So I'm going to let you figure it out yourself. He walked to the door. Wait, Sienna's voice cracked. You can't just leave me here. I can, and I will. Jae-hoon paused in the doorway. There's food in the kitchen, clothes in the closet, everything you need. When you're ready to stop being angry and start being smart, we'll talk. I'll never stop being angry. Good, Jae-hoon said, and something in his voice made her freeze. Anger keeps you sharp, and you're going to need to stay sharp. The door closed, locked, and Sienna was alone with a dead woman's name and 1,000 questions. Now here, where things get interesting. Because Jae-hoon didn't come back, not the next day, not the day after. For 3 days, Sienna was completely alone. Food appeared outside her door, perfectly prepared meals, her favorite dishes. Clothes appeared in the closet, her exact size, her style, books, music, everything she could want. Except answers. So Sienna did what any intelligent woman would do. She started investigating. The room had no obvious cameras, but she assumed she was being watched. The windows were reinforced but not blacked out. She could see mountains, forests, isolation. The door was locked, but the room itself was luxurious, comfortable. A prison designed to make you forget you were trapped. But Sienna noticed something else, something that didn't make sense. The bracelet Jae-hoon had given her on her last day, it was sitting on the dresser, still in its box. She left it in her purse, which meant Jae-hoon had gone through her things, had taken the bracelet out, had placed it deliberately where she'd see it. Why? Sienna opened the box, examined the bracelet under the light, and found the inscription inside. Chinese letter, Japanese letter, Japanese letter, Chinese letter, Chinese letter. Actions over words. Her stomach dropped, because that was something she'd said to Jae-hoon 2 years ago, after a meeting where a rival had made promises he'd never keep. In your world, she told him, actions matter more than words. He'd remembered. For 2 years, he'd remembered. On the 4th day, Jae-hoon finally came back. He brought breakfast, set it on the table like this was normal. You haven't eaten, he observed, looking at the untouched meals outside her door. I'm not hungry. You're being stubborn. I'm being smart, Sienna shot back. For all I know, the food is drugged. Jae-hoon's lips curved slightly. If I wanted to drug you, Sienna, I wouldn't need to hide it in food. He picked up a fork, took a bite of the eggs, chewed, swallowed. See, not poisoned. That doesn't prove anything. It proves I'm not trying to hurt you. You erased my life. I saved your life, Jae-hoon interrupted, his voice sharp. But you're not ready to understand that yet. Then make me understand. No. Sienna wanted to scream, because this was torture, not the imprisonment, the not knowing, the questions that spiraled in her head every night. So she changed tactics. The bracelet, she said quietly. Why did you have it inscribed? Jae-hoon went still. You looked. Of course I looked. You left it for me to find. Maybe I did. Why that phrase? Why something I said 2 years ago? Jae-hoon was silent for a long moment. Then, because that was the moment I realized you saw me differently than everyone else. What do you mean? Everyone in my world thinks words are power, promises, threats, contracts. His eyes locked on hers. But you understood that words are just noise, that the only thing that matters is what someone does when no one's watching. And what did you do when no one was watching? Jae-hoon smiled, but it wasn't a happy smile. It was sad, almost broken. I watched you, he said quietly. For 3 years, I watched you maintain boundaries I could never cross. I watched you treat me like a client when I wanted you to see me as a man. I watched you leave every night and wondered if you thought about me the way I thought about you. Sienna's breath caught. And when you resigned, Jae-hoon continued, I watched the only person who ever really understood me walk away. So yes, I made a choice. Your safety or your freedom. That's not your choice to make. It became my choice the moment I fell in love with you. The room went silent. Now wait, this is critical to understand, because Sienna could have dismissed it as manipulation, as a tactic to make her compliant. But she'd spent 3 years reading Jae-hoon's every micro-expression, every pause, every tone shift. And he wasn't lying, which made everything so much worse. You don't love me, Sienna said, but her voice shook. You don't even know me. I know you drink your coffee with cream, no sugar. I know you bite your lip when you're thinking. I know you tap your pen 3 times before you start writing. I know you read in the bath because it's the only place you feel safe enough to turn off your brain. Sienna felt her chest tighten, because those weren't things she'd told him. Those were things he'd noticed, remembered, collected over 3 years like precious artifacts. That's not love, she whispered. That's obsession. Maybe, Jae-hoon admitted, but I've never claimed to love you the way normal men do. I love you the way a drowning man loves air, the way a starving man loves food, desperately, completely. He stood. And that kind of love doesn't let go. After he left, Sienna sat in silence for hours. Because this was worse than cruelty, worse than violence. This was genuine feeling, wrapped in horrifying action. And she didn't know if that made it better or worse. But here, what started to change Sienna's perspective. It was small things, things that didn't make sense if Jae-hoon was just a possessive monster. Like how he brought her books she'd mentioned wanting to read 2 years ago, how he replaced the pillows when he noticed she wasn't sleeping well, how he asked about her mother, not to threaten, but because he remembered Sienna had mentioned her mom's birthday was coming up. Does she think I'm dead? Sienna asked one morning. Jae-hoon's expression tightened. Yes. Did you let her have a funeral? I made sure she had everything she needed. Financial support, grief counseling. I had someone pose as your employer to handle arrangements. How generous of you, Sienna said bitterly, traumatizing my mother while playing hero. I know you hate me for it, Jae-hoon said quietly, but I couldn't tell her the truth, because if she knew you were alive. He stopped himself. If she knew I was alive, what? She'd become a target too. Now this is where Sienna started to notice something was off. Because Jaehoon kept almost saying something, kept stopping himself, like there was information he wanted to share but couldn't. So she started testing him. "Who are you protecting me from?" she asked one night. "It doesn't matter." "It matters to me." "Not yet." "When?" "When you're ready to hear it." "I'm ready now." "No," Jaehoon said firmly. "You're not, because when I tell you, everything changes, and I need you to trust me before that happens." "I'll never trust you." Jaehoon's eyes softened. "Then I'll wait until you do." And that's when Sienna realized something terrifying. He was waiting for her to figure something out on her own. The third week was when Sienna started to break. Not because of the isolation, not because of Jaehoon's visits, but because of something far more insidious. She was starting to see him as human. It happened in small moments, moments she hated herself for noticing. Like the morning she woke up to find aspirin and water by her bed. She'd had a headache the night before, had barely mentioned it. Or how Jaehoon started bringing 2 coffees instead of 1, sitting across from her in silence while they both drank. He didn't force conversation, didn't demand gratitude, just existed in her space. And somehow, that was worse than any prison cell. "Why do you do that?" Sienna asked one morning, watching him sip his coffee. "Do what?" "Sit here, we don't talk, you just sit." Jaehoon was quiet for a moment. "Because for 3 years, I sat across from you in conference rooms and boardrooms and restaurants, and those were the only times I felt like I could breathe." Sienna's chest tightened. "That's not healthy." "I never claimed to be healthy." He looked at her over his coffee cup. "But I was honest, always." "You lied by omission." "I never lied to you, Sienna." His voice was firm. "Not once. I kept things from you, yes, but I never looked you in the eye and lied." And the terrifying thing was, he was right. So here, where viewers need to understand something critical. Sienna wasn't falling for him because he was kind. She was falling for him because he was consistent. In a world where everyone wore masks, Jaehoon had always been exactly who he said he was. Dangerous, possessive, honest. And consistency, even dark consistency, creates trust. Which was why when Sienna woke up one night screaming from a nightmare, and Jaehoon appeared in her doorway within seconds, she didn't tell him to leave. "Nightmare?" he asked quietly, standing in the threshold like he was afraid to cross it without permission. Sienna nodded, her breath still ragged. "About the explosion." "About my mother," her voice broke. "About her standing at my funeral, thinking I'm gone, and I can't even tell her." The sob came before she could stop it. And Jaehoon did something that shocked her. He didn't move, didn't try to comfort her, just stood there and let her break. "I hate you," Sienna whispered through tears. "I hate you so much." "I know." "You destroyed my life." "I know." "Then why are you still here?" Jaehoon's voice was barely audible, because even your hate is better than your absence. And that's when Sienna understood something that made her stomach turn. This man would rather be hated by her every day for the rest of his life than exist in a world where she wasn't in it. That wasn't love. That was something darker, deeper, more terrifying. But it was also the most honest emotion anyone had ever felt for her. The 4th week was when things shifted again. Because Jaehoon started bringing her things from her old life, not big things, small things. A book she'd left on her coffee table, her favorite mug from her apartment, a photo of her and her mother from 3 years ago. "Where did you get these?" Sienna asked, holding the photo with shaking hands. "Your apartment, before they cleared it out. You went through my things." "I saved what mattered." Jaehoon's eyes were steady. "I knew you want them eventually." "Eventually, like you knew I'd accept this." "No," Jaehoon said quietly. "Like I knew you'd need pieces of her, of who you were, even if you hate who you've become." Sienna's throat tightened, because he was right. Again, she'd been so focused on being angry that she hadn't let herself grieve. Grieve for Sienna Carter, for the life she'd had, for the future she'd planned. All of it gone, Buried, dead. I want to see the news coverage, she said suddenly. Jae-hoon frowned. Why? Because I need to see it. I need to see what the world thinks happened to me. He hesitated, then nodded. Tomorrow I'll bring a tablet. The next day, Jae-hoon brought her the tablet as promised. Sienna scrolled through articles about her death, read the comments, saw colleagues expressing shock, saw acquaintances sharing memories. And then she found her mother's statement. My daughter was the brightest light in my life. She went to Korea to chase her dreams, and now she's gone. I just want to understand why. I just want to know what happened to my baby. Sienna's hands started shaking so badly, she dropped the tablet. Jae-hoon caught it, set it aside, and for the first time since this nightmare began, he sat beside her, not close enough to touch, just close enough to be present. She'll never know, Sienna whispered. She'll die thinking I'm dead, thinking she buried her daughter. I'm sorry. Sorry doesn't bring me back. No, Jae-hoon agreed. It doesn't. They sat in silence for a long time. Then Sienna asked the question that had been building for weeks. If you really love me, how can you do this to me? Jae-hoon turned to look at her, and for the first time, she saw tears in his eyes. Because the alternative was worse, he said, his voice breaking. And I'm selfish enough to choose your hate over your death. What does that mean? It means, he stopped himself, shook his head. You're not ready. Stop saying that, Sienna's rage exploded. Stop telling me I'm not ready. I'm a prisoner in a house I didn't choose, mourning a life I didn't lose, and you won't even tell me why. Jae-hoon stood, walked to the window. His hands were clenched so tight his knuckles were white. You want to know why? His voice was hard, cold. Fine, but when I tell you, you can't unknow it, you can't unhear it. And everything you think about me, about yourself, about the last 3 years, it all changes. Tell me. He turned to face her, and the look in his eyes made her blood run cold. Your resignation wasn't the problem, Sienna. It was the timing. What does that mean? It means 2 days before you resigned, I received intelligence that someone had put a hit on you. Sienna's world stopped. What? A contract, $500,000, for your capture, torture, and execution. His voice was flat, emotionless. 3 different organizations were bidding. The highest bidder would get the contract within 48 hours. That's not possible. It's very possible, Jae-hoon said. Because they didn't want you for ransom, Sienna. They wanted you because you knew too much. You'd translated 3 years of deals, negotiations, territory agreements. You were a walking database of information that could destroy empires. Sienna felt the room spin. But I would never. I signed NDAs. They didn't care about your NDAs. They cared about eliminating a liability. Jae-hoon stepped closer. And when you resigned, when you tried to leave my protection, you became an easy target. So you faked my death. So I saved your life. His eyes bore into hers. Because if they thought you were alive somewhere, they'd never stop looking. They'd torture everyone you ever knew to find you. Your mother, your friends, everyone. But if I was dead, then the contract was void. The threat was gone. You disappeared from their radar completely. Now here's what made this moment so devastating. Because Sienna wanted to call him a liar, wanted to believe this was manipulation, an excuse. But she'd translated those deals. She knew how these organizations worked. She knew what they did to loose ends. And she was the loosest end of all. How long have you known? Her voice was barely a whisper. 6 months. 6 months, while she'd been planning to leave, while she'd been maintaining her boundaries, while she'd been convincing herself she was just his employee. Jae-hoon had been watching her walk toward her own execution. Why didn't you tell me? Would you have believed me, or would you have thought I was manipulating you to stay? Sienna couldn't answer, because he was right. She would have thought exactly that. So I did the only thing I could, Jae-hoon continued. I made you disappear, faked your death so convincingly that every organization in Seoul sent flowers to your funeral, made you untouchable because you no longer existed. And now you're safe, his voice softened, and I'm the monster who saved you. Sienna sat in silence for a long time, processing, trying to separate truth from manipulation, trying to understand if this changed anything. "Show me," she finally said. "Show you what?" "Proof, show me the intelligence, the contract, the threat." Jae-hoon shook his head. "I can't." "Why not?" "Because seeing the details, seeing what they plan to do to you," his voice cracked. "I won't put those images in your head, Sienna. I won't let you live with that. That's not your choice. It's the only choice I'm making for you that matters." He moved toward the door. "Believe me or don't, hate me or don't, but I will not show you the 47-page document detailing exactly how they planned to break you before they killed you." 47 pages. Sienna felt bile rise in her throat. "Get out," she whispered. Jae-hoon left without another word. And Sienna was alone with the most terrifying question of all. What if he was telling the truth? The 5th week was when Sienna stopped eating. Not intentionally, not as protest, but because every time she tried, she'd think about those 47 pages, about what someone had planned for her, about how close she'd come to walking straight into it. And her stomach would revolt. Jae-hoon noticed on day 3. "You need to eat," he said, looking at the untouched meals piling up. "I'm not hungry." "Sienna." "I said I'm not hungry." He didn't push, just stood there for a moment, then left. But the next morning, he brought something different. Her mother's recipe, jollof rice with fried plantains, the exact way her mom made it, slightly burnt rice at the bottom, the way Sienna secretly loved it. "How?" Sienna's voice caught. "How do you know how to make this?" "I asked someone who knew." "Who?" Jae-hoon hesitated. "Your mother, 3 years ago. When I first hired you, I did my research, found out what mattered to you, what made you feel safe." "You talked to my mother." "No, I had someone observe her, watch her cook, learn her recipes." He set the plate down. "I wanted to know everything about you, Sienna, not to control you, but because I was already falling for you and didn't know how to stop." Now here's what broke something inside Sienna. Not the obsession, not the stalking, but the fact that for 3 years, Jae-hoon had been collecting pieces of her heart while she'd been building walls to keep him out. And now those walls were crumbling. She took a bite. The taste of home, of her mother's kitchen, of Sunday dinners, of laughter and safety, hit her like a freight train. And she started crying. Not quiet tears, not dignified grief, but ugly, broken sobs that came from somewhere deep and hollow. Jae-hoon didn't leave, didn't try to comfort her, just sat across from her and waited. "I can't do this," Sienna finally said, her voice wrecked. "I can't be dead, I can't live like this, I can't." "I know." "Then let me go." "I can't." "Why not?" Jae-hoon's eyes were red-rimmed, like he'd been crying too, like he'd spent weeks watching her suffer and it was destroying him. "Because 3 days ago," he said quietly, "there was another inquiry. Someone asking questions about the explosion, about whether they ever found your body, about whether dental records could be falsified." Sienna's blood ran cold. "They're still looking." "Not actively, but they're not convinced." Jae-hoon leaned forward. "Which means if you surface now, if anyone sees you alive, the contract gets reinstated, and this time I won't be able to protect you. So I'm trapped." "You're safe," Jae-hoon corrected. "There's a difference." "Safe is just a prettier word for trapped." "Maybe," Jae-hoon admitted. "But you're alive, and as long as you're alive, there's hope." "Hope for what?" His eyes met hers. "That someday you'll understand why I did this. That someday you'll look at me and see something other than the man who destroyed your life." "What do you want me to see?" "The man who would destroy his own life to save yours." And that's when Sienna realized something that made her want to scream. She was starting to see it, and she hated herself for it. But here, where things get complicated. Because Sienna started talking to Jae-hoon, really talking, not just arguing, not just demanding answers, but actually conversing. It started small. "Tell me about the engagement," she said one morning. Jae-hoon looked surprised. "Why?" "Because I need to understand. You're supposedly in love with me, but you got engaged to someone else." He was quiet for a long moment. The engagement was strategic. Councilman Park's daughter gives me legitimacy, political protection, the kind of cover that makes it harder for people to move against me. Do you love her? No. Does she love you? She loves what I represent. Power, status. She's as practical as I am. And when were you planning to tell me about it? Jae-hoon's jaw tightened. I was, because I knew what your reaction would be. I knew you. Use it as an excuse to leave, to finally put distance between us. So you were just going to marry her and keep me as, what? A mistress. I was never going to marry her. Sienna froze. What? The engagement was a cover, Sienna, to buy time, to make my enemies think I was focused on legitimacy while I figured out how to protect you. His eyes were intense. I was never going to marry anyone but you. That's insane. That's the truth. He stood. You resigned 2 weeks before the wedding was supposed to happen, which is why I had to move faster than I planned. Had to fake your death before the wedding, before you were out of my protection. So the whole thing was about you. It was always about you. And Sienna didn't know whether to feel flattered or terrified. So she felt both. But something else was happening too, something she didn't want to acknowledge. She started noticing the way Jae-hoon looked when he thought she wasn't watching. The exhaustion in his eyes, the way his hands shook slightly when he poured coffee, the weight he was carrying. One night she asked him, "Do you sleep?" He looked up from his laptop. Enough. That's not an answer. I sleep when I'm sure you're safe. I'm locked in a house in the middle of nowhere. I'm as safe as it gets. Safe from external threats, Jae-hoon said quietly, not from internal ones. What does that mean? He closed his laptop. It means I lie awake wondering if you're going to hate me forever. If one morning I'll walk in and find you've done something desperate. If saving your life means breaking your spirit. You should have thought about that before. I think about it every second of every day. His voice cracked. You think this is easy for me, watching you suffer, knowing I'm the cause? I would give anything to go back and find another way. But I didn't have another way, Sienna, and I'd rather live with your hate than your death. Sienna's chest tightened, because she'd spent 6 weeks thinking she was the only one suffering, but Jae-hoon was suffering too, just differently. And somehow, that made everything worse. But here, where everything changed. Because one night, Sienna woke up to find Jae-hoon sitting in the chair by her window, just sitting there, staring out at the mountains. What are you doing? She asked, her voice rough with sleep. I had a nightmare. That shocked her, because Jae-hoon never showed weakness, never admitted vulnerability. About what? He didn't look at her. About finding you, after they'd finished with you, about having to identify your body, about knowing that I'd failed the only person who ever mattered. Sienna sat up slowly. Jae-hoon. I can't stop seeing it, he continued, his voice hollow. Even though it didn't happen, even though you're here alive, safe, I can't stop seeing the nightmare of what could have been. Why are you telling me this? Finally, he turned to look at her, and the raw pain in his eyes nearly broke her. Because you asked if I sleep, and the truth is I don't. Because every time I close my eyes, I see the 47 pages. I see what they were going to do to you, and I see myself arriving too late to stop it. Sienna's throat tightened. You saved me. I destroyed you. You did both. Silence stretched between them. Then Sienna did something she'd sworn she'd never do. She got out of bed, walked to where Jae-hoon was sitting, and sat down beside him. Not touching, just close. Tell me about the pages, she said quietly. No. Not the details, just tell me why it terrifies you so much. Jae-hoon was silent for a long time. Then, because the first 30 pages were about extraction, capture, transportation, professional, cold, standard procedure for high-value targets. He paused. The last 17 pages were personal. What do you mean personal? I mean whoever wrote them knew you, Sienna, knew your habits, your fears, your vulnerabilities. His hands clenched. They knew exactly how to break you, not just physically, psychologically, emotionally. Sienna felt ice in her veins. Who wrote them? I don't know. You're lying. I'm not. He finally looked at her. That's what terrifies me most. The person who wrote those pages knew you intimately, which means someone in your life, someone close to you, wanted you dead. And that's when everything Sienna thought she understood shattered. Someone I knew. Her voice was barely a whisper. Someone you trusted. That's impossible. It's not. Jae-hoon pulled out his phone, opened a file. I've been investigating for 6 months, trying to find who commissioned the contract, who provided the information, who knew you well enough to weaponize it. And I have 3 suspects, 3 people who had access to your life, your schedule, your routines. He hesitated. One of them wanted you dead, Sienna, and I still don't know which one. Who? Jae-hoon's eyes were dark. Your replacement, the man I hired to take over your translation work. Sienna's stomach dropped. No, he was professional, qualified. He was embedded, planted by someone who wanted access to my operations. Jae-hoon scrolled through his phone. His credentials were perfect, too perfect. Background check was clean, too clean. Who else? Your friend from the coffee shop, the one you met with every Wednesday. Sienna felt her world tilt. Maya, she's just a grad student. Who showed up in Seoul 6 months before you resigned. Who had no digital footprint before 2023. Who asked very specific questions about your work. And the third. Jae-hoon's jaw clenched. Someone in my own organization. Someone who had access to my files, my communications. Someone who knew how much you mattered to me. Now here's what made this revelation so devastating. Because Sienna had spent 7 weeks thinking Jae-hoon was the villain, that he'd stolen her life out of possessive obsession. But what if he'd saved her from someone far worse, someone who'd pretended to be her friend? I don't believe you, Sienna whispered. I didn't want you to, Jae-hoon said quietly. Which is why I didn't tell you sooner, because believing me means accepting that someone you trusted wanted you tortured and killed. And that's a hell I didn't want to put you through. So you put me through this hell instead. Yes, he didn't flinch, didn't apologize, because this hell keeps you breathing. Sienna stood, walked to the window, stared out at the mountains that had become her prison. Show me the file, she said finally. Sienna. Show me the fucking file, Jae-hoon. He stood, walked over, handed her his phone. And Sienna started reading. The first page was a timeline. 6 months before Sienna's resignation, someone had started compiling information. Her coffee shop routine, her gym schedule, the route she walked home, the friends she met, the places she felt safe. It read like a hunter studying prey. This is, Sienna's hand shook, this is surveillance. Professional surveillance, Jae-hoon confirmed quietly. The kind that costs money, the kind that takes time. She scrolled to the next page, and her blood ran cold. Because there were photos, dozens of them. Sienna leaving her apartment, Sienna at the coffee shop, Sienna meeting Maya for their Wednesday lunches. And in every single photo, there was a timestamp and a note. Subject unaware of observation. Security protocols, minimal. Vulnerability level, high. Oh my God, Sienna whispered. Keep reading. She scrolled further, found psychological profile notes. Subject demonstrates strong emotional attachment to family, particularly mother. Exploitable through familial threat. Subject maintains professional boundaries in workplace, indicates fear-based compliance rather than genuine loyalty. Emotional isolation suggests limited support system. Ideal target for extraction with minimal collateral investigation. Sienna felt bile rise in her throat. They were going to use my mother against me. Yes. They knew I was isolated, that I didn't have friends here, that no one would notice right away if I disappeared. Yes. She kept scrolling, and then she found the page that broke her. It was titled, Interrogation Strategy, Subject Psychological Vulnerabilities. And underneath, in clinical detached language, subject's primary fear, abandonment, demonstrated through maternal relationship and professional boundary maintenance. Recommend isolation tactics first, 72 hours minimum deprivation before physical persuasion. Subject likely to cooperate under threat of maternal harm. If cooperation insufficient, recommend escalation per attachment protocols. The phone slipped from Sienna's hands. Because whoever wrote this didn't just want information. They wanted to destroy her, systematically, scientifically. I need to sit down, she whispered. Jae-hoon caught her as her knees gave out, guided her to the bed, sat beside her. Now do you understand? His voice was raw. This wasn't just a contract, Sienna. This was personal. Someone wanted you to suffer. But why? What did I do? That's what I've been trying to figure out for 6 months. Sienna sat in silence, her mind racing through 3 years of memories. Every interaction, every conversation, every person she'd trusted. The replacement, she said finally. You said his credentials were too perfect. What does that mean? Jae-hoon pulled up another file on his phone. His name is David Chen. Background says he worked for 3 different translation agencies in the U.S. before coming to Seoul. Glowing recommendations, perfect language skills. So I had my people verify every detail. And guess what? The agencies exist. The recommendations exist. But David Chen doesn't, not really. What do you mean? I mean the person who showed up to interview had Chen's credentials, but no digital footprint before 2022. No childhood photos, no school records, no social media history. Jae-hoon's eyes were hard. Someone created David Chen specifically to replace you. Sienna's stomach churned. To get close to you. Or to finish what they started. If you were dead, someone still needed access to my operations. Someone who could translate, who could sit in those rooms and collect information. So he's a spy. Or an assassin waiting for the right moment. Jae-hoon's jaw clenched. I couldn't fire him without raising suspicion, couldn't investigate too closely without tipping him off, so I kept him close and watched. And 3 weeks ago, he asked about you. Asked if I'd recovered from losing such a valuable employee. Asked if I knew what caused the explosion. Sienna felt her chest tighten. What did you say? I said you were a professional loss, nothing more, that I'd moved on. Jae-hoon's voice dropped. And while I said it, I watched his eyes, looking for satisfaction, for confirmation that he'd succeeded in eliminating you. Did you see it? I saw something, but I couldn't tell if it was satisfaction or suspicion. And my friend, Sienna asked, her voice barely audible. Maya. Jae-hoon's expression darkened. She's more complicated. Why? Because on paper, she's exactly what she says she is. Graduate student, journalism major, doing research on expatriate communities in Seoul. That's not suspicious. It is when her research specifically focuses on foreign nationals working in gray market industries. Jae-hoon pulled up another file. She published her thesis proposal 2 months after you met, titled, The Invisible Facilitators, How Foreign Language Experts Enable Transnational Crime Networks. Sienna felt her world tilt. No, she never mentioned. Because she was studying you, Sienna, every coffee date, every conversation, every time you vented about work stress or mentioned being tired of the moral compromises. He scrolled through the document. She was gathering case study material, and in academic research, you don't tell your subjects they're being studied. But she's just a student. Who received a grant from a foundation that doesn't exist. Who lives in an apartment she can't afford on a student budget. Who showed up in Seoul with perfect timing and perfect access to you. Sienna wanted to argue, wanted to defend Maya, but the evidence was stacking up like stones on her chest. What if she was just writing a thesis? What if she's innocent? Then, why did she meet with someone from the Chinese syndicate 3 days before your resignation? Silence. What? Sienna's voice cracked. Jae-hoon pulled up surveillance photos. Maya, outside a restaurant in Itaewon, meeting with a known associate of the same organization that commissioned your contract. The photos were clear, undeniable. Maya, smiling, shaking hands with a man in an expensive suit. No, Sienna whispered. No, there has to be an explanation. Maybe there is, Jae-hoon said quietly. Maybe she was just interviewing him for her research. Maybe it's coincidence. You don't believe that? No, I don't. Sienna stood, paced. Her mind was fracturing into 1,000 pieces. "And the person in your organization?" she asked, her voice hollow. "Who is it?" Jae-hoon hesitated. For the first time, he looked uncertain. "I can't tell you." "Why not?" "Because if I'm wrong, I've accused someone loyal of betrayal. And if I'm right," he paused, "if I'm right, telling you puts you in more danger." "I'm already in danger. I'm already dead." "You're alive," Jae-hoon corrected firmly. "And you'll stay that way as long as the traitor thinks their plan worked. So I'm supposed to just trust you. Just believe that someone in your organization wanted me dead, and you won't even tell me who." "Yes." "That's insane." "That's survival." Jae-hoon stood facing her. "The moment you know who it is, your behavior changes. You'll look at them differently, react differently. And if they're watching, and they are always watching, they'll know something's wrong. So I'm bait. You're protected. There's a difference. Not when it keeps you alive." They stood there, both breathing hard, both trapped in a nightmare neither of them knew how to escape. Finally, Sienna's voice broke the silence. "I need to know who it is. I need to know which one of them wanted me dead." Jae-hoon's eyes were dark. "Why? So you can confront them, get revenge? That's not how this works, Sienna." "Then how does it work?" "It works by keeping you hidden until I can identify the traitor, eliminate the threat, and make it safe for you to exist again." "And how long will that take?" Jae-hoon's silence was answer enough. "You don't know, do you?" Sienna felt tears burning. "You have no idea when or if I'll ever be able to go back." "No," he admitted quietly. "I don't." And that's when Sienna broke. Not with rage, not with tears, but with something far more dangerous. Acceptance. "I can't do this," she whispered, sinking onto the bed. "I can't live like this, not knowing who to trust, not knowing if I'll ever see my mother again, not knowing if this is my life now, forever." Jae-hoon knelt in front of her. For the first time since this nightmare began, he looked genuinely terrified. "Sienna, please." "I'm so tired, Jae-hoon." Her voice was empty, hollow. "I'm tired of being angry. I'm tired of hating you. I'm tired of not knowing if you're my savior or my jailer." "I'm both," he said quietly. "I know that doesn't help, but it's the truth. The truth is exhausting." "I know." She looked at him, really looked at him, saw the man who'd watched her for 3 years, the man who'd collected pieces of her heart like treasures, the man who'd destroyed her life to save it. "Do you really love me?" she asked. "Or do you just love the idea of possessing me?" Jae-hoon's eyes glistened. "I don't know anymore. Maybe they're the same thing. Maybe I'm too broken to love you the right way." "That's the most honest thing you've ever said." "I'm always honest with you, Sienna, even when the truth is ugly." And then something shifted. Because Sienna reached out, touched his face, felt the stubble on his jaw, the warmth of his skin, the realness of him. "I should hate you," she whispered. "You do hate me. I should hate you more." "You will, eventually." But right now, she couldn't finish. Because right now, in this moment, Jae-hoon was the only real thing in her world. The only person who knew she existed. The only anchor in a sea of death and lies and betrayal. And that was the cruelest prison of all. That night, Sienna couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about the 3 suspects. The replacement, Maya, the unknown traitor in Jae-hoon's organization. But something wasn't adding up. She got out of bed, found Jae-hoon in his study. He'd started sleeping in the house instead of leaving at night, claimed it was for security, but Sienna knew better. He was afraid she'd do something desperate. "I need to see the file again," she said from the doorway. Jae-hoon looked up from his laptop, exhausted. "Sienna, it's 3 in the morning." "I need to see it." He studied her face, then handed over his phone. Sienna scrolled through the surveillance timeline again. The photos, the notes, the psychological profile. And that's when she noticed something. The dates. "Jae-hoon," she said slowly, "when did you say this surveillance started?" 6 months before your resignation. Why?" "And when did Maya move to Seoul?" 6 months before you resigned." He stopped, sat up straighter. "What are you thinking?" I'm thinking the timeline is too convenient. Sienna pulled up the photos of Maya. Look at this. Her first meeting with me was at the coffee shop, the same coffee shop I'd been going to for 2 years. So how did she know I'd be there? How did she know that was my coffee shop? Jae-hoon frowned. You think she was directed there? I think someone told her exactly where to find me, exactly when I'd be there, exactly how to approach me. Sienna scrolled faster. And look at this conversation log. She asked me about work stress the first time we met. Who does that? Who asks a complete stranger about their job on the first meeting? Someone gathering information. Or someone following a script. Sienna looked up. What if Maya isn't the mastermind? What if she's just another tool, like me? Jae-hoon went very still. Keep going. And David Chen, the replacement. Sienna was packing now, her mind racing. You said his credentials were too perfect, his timing too convenient, but what if that's the point? What if he was supposed to be obvious, supposed to draw your attention? A distraction. Exactly. Sienna stopped packing. You've been so focused on watching him that you haven't looked deeper at. She froze. At what? Jae-hoon stood. Sienna's hands were shaking. At who recommended him? What? Who recommended David Chen for the position? Who brought his name to you? Jae-hoon's face went pale. My head of security, Min Seo. He said Chen came highly recommended from a trusted agency. And you verified the agency? Yes. But did you verify how Min Seo found Chen in the first place? Silence. Oh God, Jae-hoon whispered. Min Seo. How long has he worked for you? Sienna asked. 8 years. He's been with me since the beginning. I trust him with my life. And with mine, apparently. Sienna felt her chest tighten. Jae-hoon, if Min Seo is the traitor, then he had access to everything. Your schedule, your communications, your plans. He'd know exactly how much I mattered to you. No, it can't be Min Seo. He saved my life 3 times. Or he's been building trust, so he could destroy you at the right moment. Jae-hoon sat down heavily, like his legs wouldn't hold him anymore. If it's Min Seo, he said quietly, then I've been compromised for 8 years. Everything I've built, every deal, every alliance. He's had access to all of it. And he's had access to me. Their eyes met. He was there, Sienna whispered. At my last day, he walked me to the elevator, said goodbye. What did he say? Sienna's blood ran cold as she remembered. He said, "Good luck, Miss Carter. I hope you find what you're looking for." That's normal. No, the way he said it, like he knew something, like he was satisfied. Sienna felt panic rising. Jae-hoon, what if he knew you were going to fake my death? What if he's been waiting to see if it worked? Jae-hoon stood abruptly, pulled out his phone, started making calls. What are you doing? Sienna asked. I'm pulling Min Seo's records, every communication, every movement, every financial transaction for the last 8 years. If he's smart, he'll have hidden it. Everyone leaves traces, Jae-hoon said grimly, even the smart ones. 3 hours later, as dawn broke over the mountains, they found it. Not in Min Seo's financial records, not in his communications, but in his family. His sister, Jae-hoon said, staring at his laptop screen. She died 5 years ago. I don't understand. She was killed in a territory dispute, caught in the crossfire of a deal I brokered with the Chinese syndicate. Jae-hoon's voice was hollow. I didn't know she was in that building. It was supposed to be empty, but she was there, and when the shooting started. Oh God. I paid for the funeral, set up a fund for her son, I thought. Jae-hoon's hands were shaking. I thought Min Seo understood it was an accident, collateral damage, the cost of the life we live. But he didn't. He's been planning this for 5 years. Jae-hoon pulled up more files. Look, payments to David Chen, payments to Maya, small, untraceable amounts spread over years. He was building a network. To destroy you. To take everything from me the way I took everything from him. Jae-hoon's voice cracked. His sister was his only family, and I killed her. Sienna felt something break inside her chest. Because suddenly, this wasn't a story about obsessive love or possessive control. This was a story about revenge and grief and the devastating cost of violence. He didn't want me dead, Sienna said slowly. He wanted you to suffer. Yes. He knew you loved me, so he created a contract that would force you to watch me die. Slowly, painfully. Yes. But you faked my death first. Jae-hoon looked at her, and for the first time, she saw the full weight of what he'd done. I ruined his revenge, Jae-hoon said quietly, which means he's not finished. He's waiting for another opportunity, another way to make me suffer. So we're both in danger. We've always been in danger. I just didn't know the threat was sleeping under my roof. Sienna sat down slowly. Because now she understood. Everything, the fake death, the isolation, the secrets. Jae-hoon hadn't just been protecting her from external enemies. He'd been protecting her from someone he'd trusted completely. Someone who had 8 years of access, 8 years of knowledge, 8 years to plan the perfect revenge. What do we do? She asked quietly. I don't know. You always know. Not this time. Jae-hoon looked at her, and she'd never seen him look so lost. If I confront Min Seo, he'll know you're alive. He'll trigger whatever backup plan he has. But if I don't confront him, he'll keep probing, keep pushing. Eventually, he'll find you. So we're trapped. Yes. They sat in silence as the sun rose over the mountains. And then Sienna said something that changed everything. What if we give him what he wants? Jae-hoon looked at her sharply. What? He wants you to suffer. He wants to see you destroyed by losing me. Sienna's mind was racing. So let's show him that. Let's make him believe he succeeded. Sienna, I don't understand. You said he's been probing, asking questions about the explosion, about whether you've recovered from losing me. Yes. So stop pretending you've recovered. Sienna leaned forward. Show him that losing me broke you, that you're falling apart, that his revenge worked. Jae-hoon's eyes widened. You want me to fake a breakdown? I want you to show him the truth, Sienna said quietly. Because you are falling apart, Jae-hoon. I see it, the sleepless nights, the way your hands shake, the guilt eating you alive. That's not. Don't lie to me, not now. Her voice was firm. You destroyed my life to save it, and it's destroying you. So show Min Seo that. Let him see his revenge working. Let him think he's won. And then he'll make a mistake. He'll get confident. He'll reveal himself. Or he'll escalate, try to finish what he started. Which is why we need to be ready when he does. Jae-hoon stared at her for a long moment. This is dangerous, Sienna, if something goes wrong. Something already gone wrong, she interrupted. I'm dead. You're being eaten alive by guilt. A man who's like a brother to you is actually your worst enemy. We're past the point of safe choices. I can't risk you. You don't get to make that decision alone anymore. Sienna stood. Not after everything. If we're doing this, if I'm staying dead, then we do it together, as partners. Partners? Jae-hoon said the word like he was testing it, like it was something foreign and fragile. Yes, you stop making decisions for me, and I stop fighting every choice you make. We work together to trap Min Seo, to end this. And after, if we survive. Sienna's voice was quiet but steady. After, we figure out what happens to a dead woman and the man who killed her. Jae-hoon stood, walked to where she was standing, stopped just inches away. I need you to know something, he said quietly. Before we do this, before we put you in even more danger. What? If I had to choose again, knowing everything I know now, knowing what it would cost both of us, I'd still do it. His eyes were fierce. I'd still fake your death. I'd still trap you here, because the alternative is a world where you don't exist, and I can't survive that world, Sienna. Sienna felt tears burning. That's the most selfish thing you've ever said to me. I know. And the most honest. I know that too. She reached up, touched his face. I should hate you for that. You do hate me for that. I should hate you more. You will. But in that moment, with dawn breaking over the mountains and a trap forming in her mind, Sienna realized something terrifying. She didn't hate him, not anymore. She didn't know what she felt. Love. No, not yet, maybe never. But understanding. and partnership, and something that felt dangerously close to forgiveness. They spent the next 3 days planning. Not just logistics, but performance. Because if Min Seo was going to believe Jae-hoon was falling apart, every detail had to be perfect. "He knows you," Sienna said, studying Jae-hoon across the table covered in notes. "He's spent 8 years watching you. He'll spot a fake breakdown." "So it can't be fake," Jae-hoon replied grimly. "It has to be real." "Can you do that? Can you show him vulnerability?" Jae-hoon was quiet for a moment. Then, "I won't have to pretend. Losing you, even fake losing you, has been destroying me for weeks. I just have to stop hiding it." The plan was simple in concept, complex in execution. Phase 1, Jae-hoon returns to Seoul, shows visible signs of breakdown, drinking more, sleeping less, making uncharacteristic mistakes in meetings. Let Min Seo see the cracks. Phase 2, Sienna remains hidden but starts leaving traces. Small, deniable traces that would make Min Seo wonder if his plan actually worked. A question about whether the explosion was thoroughly investigated. A moment of doubt. Phase 3, wait for Min Seo to make his move, because confident predators always do. "What if he doesn't take the bait?" Sienna asked. "He will," Jae-hoon said with certainty. "He's been waiting 5 years for this. He won't be able to resist confirming his victory. And when he makes his move, we'll be ready." But there was one more thing they needed to discuss. "The engagement," Sienna said on the night before Jae-hoon was scheduled to return to Seoul. "To Councilman Park's daughter." Jae-hoon looked up from his laptop. "What about it? Is it real, or was that part of the cover too?" He closed the laptop slowly. "It was supposed to be real. A strategic marriage to legitimize my operations, give me political protection." "Was. I called it off." Sienna's heart skipped. "When?" "The day after I faked your death." Jae-hoon's eyes met hers. "Because I realized I couldn't stand at an altar promising forever to someone else when the only person I wanted forever with was you." "That's insane." "That's the truth," he interrupted. "Councilman Park was furious, threatened to pull all his support, said I was making an emotional decision instead of a strategic one. He was right." "I know." Jae-hoon stood, walked to the window. "But strategy doesn't matter when you're in love with a dead woman. Nothing matters except keeping her alive." Sienna felt her chest tighten. Because she'd spent 7 weeks believing Jae-hoon had faked her death, and then proceeded with his marriage plans. Had imprisoned her while building a legitimate life with someone else. But he destroyed his own future the moment he saved hers. "You're an idiot," she said quietly. "I know. You gave up political protection, legitimate business opportunities, everything you'd been working toward." "For you, yes." "Why?" Jae-hoon turned to face her. "Because love isn't strategic, Sienna. It's not calculated. It's not smart. It's sacrificing everything you've built for one person's heartbeat, one person's breath, one person's existence. That's not love, that's obsession. Maybe they're the same thing." He moved closer. "Or maybe I'm just damaged enough that I can't tell the difference anymore." That night, for the first time since this nightmare began, Sienna couldn't sleep for a different reason. Not fear, not anger, but something far more dangerous. Doubt. Because she'd spent 7 weeks building a wall between herself and Jae-hoon, convincing herself he was a monster, that what he'd done was unforgivable. But monsters don't sacrifice their empires for the people they've imprisoned. Monsters don't sit outside your door all night making sure you're safe. Don't learn your mother's recipes. Don't cry when they talk about nightmares of finding you dead. So what did that make Jae-hoon? She found him in the study at 2 a.m., staring at security footage. "Can't sleep either," she asked from the doorway. He looked up, surprised. "I didn't want to disturb you." "You're reviewing footage." "Of Min Seo, trying to find patterns, moments I missed, signs I should have seen." Sienna walked closer, looked at the screen, saw Min Seo standing beside Jae-hoon at some formal event, smiling, loyal, perfect. "He looks normal," she observed. "He's brilliant," Jae-hoon said quietly. "That's why I never suspected. He played the role perfectly for 8 years." Do you think he ever cared, or was it always an act? Jae-hoon was silent for a long moment. I think he cared once, before his sister died, before I became the man who destroyed his family. He paused the footage. I think he's been mourning and plotting simultaneously, loving and hating me at the same time. That sounds familiar, Sienna said softly. Jae-hoon looked at her sharply. Sienna. I'm not saying I love you, she interrupted. I'm saying I understand what it's like to feel two contradictory things about the same person, to hate someone for what they've done while understanding why they did it. Is that what you feel, about me? Sienna sat down in the chair beside him. I don't know what I feel anymore. A month ago, I knew exactly who I was, where I was going, what I wanted. And now? Now I'm a dead woman sitting in a safe house with a man who killed her, planning to trap someone who wants us both destroyed. She laughed bitterly. I don't even know what normal feels like anymore. Jae-hoon reached out slowly, like he was afraid she'd pull away. She didn't. His hand covered hers, warm, solid, real. I know I've taken everything from you, he said quietly. Your life, your identity, your freedom, your future. Yes. But if we survive this, if we trap Min-seo and neutralize the threat, I'll give you a choice. Sienna looked at him. What choice? Stay or go. His voice was steady, but his hand trembled slightly. If you want to disappear, start a new life somewhere far from me. I'll give you money, a new identity, everything you need. I'll let you go. And if I stay? Jae-hoon's eyes were dark. Then we figure out what it means to build a life in the shadows, together. That's not a life. It's the only life I can offer you, he interrupted. Because even if Min-seo is eliminated, you can't come back from the dead, Sienna. Too many questions, too much scrutiny. You'd be in danger again. So I'm trapped either way. Yes, he didn't flinch from the truth. You're trapped in death or trapped with me. Those are the only choices I can give you. Sienna pulled her hand away, stood, walked to the window. You're asking me to choose between isolation and captivity. I'm asking you to choose between survival alone or survival together. That's not a choice. That's an ultimatum. It's reality. Jae-hoon stood, moved behind her, not touching, just close enough that she could feel his presence. I know it's not fair. I know you deserve better, but this is the hand we've been dealt. The hand you dealt, Sienna corrected sharply. Yes, the hand I dealt when I chose your life over your happiness. They stood in silence, watching the sun start to rise over the mountains. And then Sienna said something that surprised them both. Ask me again, after we trap Min-seo, after the threat is gone, ask me again if I want to stay or go. Jae-hoon turned to look at her, and your answer will be. I don't know yet, she met his eyes, but I want to make that choice when I'm not afraid, when I'm not running, when I know what I'm choosing. And if you choose to leave. Sienna's voice was quiet but firm. Then you let me go, no tracking, no surveillance, no showing up in whatever city I disappear to. You let me be free. And if you choose to stay. She didn't answer right away, just looked at this man who destroyed everything to save her. This man who'd sacrificed his empire, his legitimacy, his future. This man who looked at her like she was air and he was drowning. If I stay, she said finally, then we stop pretending this is normal. We stop calling this protection when it's really possession. We acknowledge what this actually is. And what is it? Two broken people trying to survive in a world that wants them dead. Jae-hoon's lips curved in something that wasn't quite a smile. That's the most honest thing you've ever said to me. You're rubbing off on me. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Sienna looked at him for a long moment. I'll tell you after we survive. Jae-hoon returned to Seoul the next morning. And for the first time in 8 years, Min-seo saw his boss look fragile. It started small. Jae-hoon showing up late to meetings, something he never did, his suit slightly wrinkled, his tie not quite straight, small details that screamed wrong to anyone who knew him. Min-seo noticed immediately. Boss, he said after the third late arrival, is everything okay? You seem distracted. Jae-hoon looked at him with tired eyes. I'm fine, just having trouble sleeping. Since the translator. Don't. Jaehoon's voice was sharp, then softer. Just don't mention her. Min Seo's eyes gleamed. Of course, my apologies. But Jaehoon didn't stop there. He started drinking during meetings, making uncharacteristic errors in negotiations, snapping at subordinates, all the behaviors of a man falling apart. And he made sure Min Seo witnessed all of it. You need to rest, Min Seo said one evening, finding Jaehoon alone in his office with an empty whiskey bottle. This isn't healthy. Healthy? Jaehoon laughed bitterly. Nothing about my life is healthy, Min Seo. What do you mean? Jaehoon looked at him, and for just a moment let real pain show through. Have you ever loved someone you couldn't have? Someone who was right there in your life every day, but completely untouchable? Min Seo went very still. The translator. Sienna, Jaehoon said her name like it hurt. Her name was Sienna, and he stopped himself. It doesn't matter now, she's gone. Maybe it's for the best. It's not. Jaehoon's voice broke, genuine anguish. It's not for the best. She was the only good thing in my world, and now she's dead because I couldn't protect her. Back at the safe house, Sienna watched the footage through hidden cameras. Watched Jaehoon perform his breakdown. Watched Min Seo's face as he absorbed every moment. And saw something that made her blood run cold. Satisfaction. Pure, undisguised satisfaction in Min Seo's eyes as he watched Jaehoon fall apart. He's buying it, she whispered into the comm device. In Seoul, Jaehoon heard her voice in his nearly invisible earpiece, the only connection between them, the only proof she was still alive. He poured another drink he wouldn't actually consume, and continued the performance. 2 weeks into the breakdown, they started phase 2. Small traces, deniable questions. Jaehoon asking his lawyer, is it possible to falsify dental records, hypothetically? Jaehoon requesting the explosion investigation files, reading them repeatedly. Jaehoon visiting the explosion site at 3 a.m., standing there like a man at a grave. All of it witnessed, all of it reported back to Min Seo. He's watching you more closely, Sienna observed during one of their nightly calls. I know, I can feel it. Do you think he suspects? I think he's trying to figure out if I'm grieving or guilty. Jaehoon's voice was tired. If he thinks I faked your death, he'll make a move. And if he thinks you're just falling apart, then he'll wait for the perfect moment to finish me. But on week 3, something unexpected happened. David Chen, the replacement translator, approached Jaehoon privately. Mr. Kang, he said, his voice carefully neutral. I need to speak with you about something sensitive. Jaehoon's blood ran cold. What is it? It's about Miss Carter's death. What about it? David hesitated. I don't think it was an accident. In the safe house, Sienna sat up sharply. This isn't part of the plan, she said into the comm. Jaehoon's voice came back, barely audible. I know, stay quiet, let me handle this. Why do you say that? Jaehoon asked David carefully. Because 3 days before she died, she came to me during training, asked me a strange question. What question? David pulled out his phone, showed Jaehoon a text message. If someone wanted to make a person disappear, not kill them but disappear, how would they do it? Jaehoon's heart stopped. She sent you that? Yes, and I thought it was just a hypothetical, a test or something. David's eyes were sharp. But then she died, and the explosion seemed convenient. What are you suggesting? David leaned closer. I'm suggesting that Miss Carter might have had help disappearing, and if that's true, then someone in this organization knows she's alive. Sienna was on her feet in the safe house, packing frantically. Jaehoon, this is bad, if David knows. But Jaehoon's voice was calm in her ear. He doesn't know, he suspects. There's a difference. Why are you telling me this? Jaehoon asked David. Because if Miss Carter is alive, she's in danger, real danger. And if someone in your organization helped her disappear, they're putting everyone at risk. Who do you think helped her? David met his eyes steadily. I think you did, Mr. Kang. Silence. Then Jaehoon did something that shocked both David and Sienna. He smiled. Not a happy smile, a sad, broken smile. I wish I had, he said quietly. I wish I'd been smart enough, brave enough to save her, but I was, and now she's dead, and I have to live with that. David studied his face for a long moment, then nodded slowly. I apologize, I shouldn't have. It's fine, Jae-hoon stood, if that's all. Actually, there's one more thing. Yes. David's voice dropped. Min Seo has been asking me questions about the explosion, about whether I believe the investigation findings, about whether you seem stable. Everything clicked into place. He's using you, Jae-hoon said quietly. I know, David's eyes were hard. That's why I'm telling you, because whatever game he's playing, I don't want to be a pawn in it. After David left, Jae-hoon sat in silence. Sienna, he said quietly into the comm, we have a problem. David knows. David suspects, but more importantly, Jae-hoon paused. I think Min Seo is setting him up, using him to probe, to test my reactions. Which means Min Seo is close to making his move. And when he does, it's going to be bigger than we thought. Everything happened in 48 hours. Hour 1. Min Seo requested a private meeting. Late night. Jae-hoon's penthouse, just the two of them. That's the trap, Sienna said through the comm, her voice tight. He's isolating you. I know. Don't go alone. I have to. If I bring backup, he'll know I suspect him. Jae-hoon checked his concealed weapon. Besides, I won't be alone, you'll be listening. That's not the same as being there. Sienna, his voice was firm, trust me. Silence, then, come back alive. That's the plan. Hour 6. The penthouse. Night. City lights sprawling below like a field of stars. Min Seo arrived exactly on time, impeccably dressed, perfectly composed. You wanted to see me? Jae-hoon asked, pouring 2 glasses of whiskey. I'm worried about you, boss. Min Seo accepted the glass. You haven't been yourself since the translator died. Her name was Sienna. I know, Min Seo sipped his drink. I also know you loved her. Jae-hoon went very still. What makes you say that? 8 years, boss. I've watched you with countless women, models, actresses, politicians' daughters. Min Seo's eyes were sharp, but you never looked at any of them the way you looked at her. And how did I look at her? Like she was the only real thing in a world of illusions. In the safe house, Sienna's hands were shaking as she listened. Because Min Seo's voice wasn't accusatory, it was almost sympathetic. She was real, Jae-hoon admitted quietly. The only person who saw me as human instead of monster. And now she's gone. Yes. Min Seo set down his glass. What if I told you she didn't have to be? Jae-hoon's blood ran cold. What do you mean? I mean, Min Seo stood, walked to the window. What if the explosion wasn't what it seemed? What if someone wanted you to think she was dead when she's actually alive? That's impossible. I saw the evidence. Evidence can be manufactured. Min Seo turned to face him. Dental records can be falsified. Bodies can be procured. Investigations can be influenced. Why are you telling me this? Min Seo's smile was cold. Because I want to watch your face when you realize the truth. Jae-hoon, Sienna whispered urgently into the comm. Get out now. But he couldn't move, because Min Seo was walking toward him with a phone. I'm going to show you something, Min Seo said. And when I do, I want you to know that all of this is your fault. He pressed play. The video was dark, grainy, security footage from somewhere industrial. Then a voice, target secured, awaiting extraction orders. The camera panned, and Sienna saw her own face on the screen. Not from 7 weeks ago, from 3 days ago. Footage of her in the safe house, walking to the window, clearly alive. No, Sienna breathed. Surprised, Min Seo asked Jae-hoon. I've known for weeks, had surveillance on the property since week 2. Jae-hoon's gun was in his hand instantly. But Min Seo was faster. His gun was already aimed, not at Jae-hoon. At the camera hidden in the corner, the one connected to Sienna's comm. She's watching, isn't she? Min Seo said calmly. Hello, Miss Carter. Hope you're comfortable in your grave. How? Jaehoon's voice was deadly quiet. David Chen isn't the only person I planted in your organization. Min Seo's smile widened. I've had people in your security team for 2 years, watching, waiting, learning your patterns. The safe house. I let you take her there, let you think she was hidden, because I needed you to feel safe. I needed you to let your guard down. Min Seo circled him slowly. Do you know what it's like, boss? Watching someone you love die, holding them while their blood soaks your hands, knowing that one man's ambition destroyed everything. Your sister. MY's sister was innocent. Min Seo's composure shattered. She had nothing to do with your world. She was a teacher. She was kind. And you killed her because she was in the wrong building at the wrong time. Jaehoon lowered his gun slowly. I know. I've lived with that guilt every day. Guilt, Min Seo laughed bitterly. You paid for a funeral like that erases murder, like money fixes death. Nothing fixes death, Jaehoon said quietly. I know that, but I tried. You tried nothing. Min Seo's gun hand shook. You went on living your life, building your empire, collecting women, while my sister's son grew up without a mother, while I pretended to be your loyal dog and plotted your destruction. So this is revenge. This is justice. Then shoot me, Jaehoon said. Do it, take your revenge, but leave Sienna out of this. Min Seo's smile returned. But that's the beautiful part. I'm not going to shoot you. Then what? I'm going to let you live, but Sienna, Min Seo looked directly at the hidden camera. She dies tonight, and you get to live knowing you couldn't save her, just like I lived knowing I couldn't save my sister. In the safe house, Sienna was already moving. She'd heard enough, knew enough. Min Seo had people outside, waiting for his signal. She had maybe 5 minutes. You have a choice, Min Seo told Jaehoon. Tell me where the safe house is and I'll make her death quick, painless, or I can let my team do what the original contract specified, 47 pages of suffering. I'll never. Min Seo pressed a button on his phone. A live video feed appeared. The safe house, exterior, 4 men approaching with weapons. They're already there, Min Seo said calmly. I'm just deciding how much she suffers before she dies. Jaehoon moved before Min Seo could react. Closed the distance, knocked the gun away. They crashed into the coffee table. But Min Seo was trained too, had been preparing for this moment for 5 years. They fought viciously, desperately. And as they did, Min Seo laughed. It doesn't matter. Even if you kill me, they'll finish her. She's already dead. But what Min Seo didn't know, what no one knew, was that Sienna had spent 7 weeks preparing for exactly this moment. Because when the 4 men breached the safe house, expecting to find a scared, trapped woman, they found an empty room. And a tripwire. The explosion took out 2 of them instantly. The other 2 stumbled back, disoriented. And Sienna came from behind. Not with a gun, with something she'd made from the kitchen, improvised, deadly. 7 weeks of isolation hadn't made her weak. It had made her dangerous. She took down the 3rd man with a knife to the femoral artery. Clinical, precise, like she'd translated violence so long she'd learned to speak it. The 4th man raised his gun. And Jaehoon's voice screamed in her earpiece, Sienna, DOWN. She dropped. The shot that would have killed her shattered the window instead. Because Jaehoon had activated the safe house security system remotely, the one Min Seo didn't know existed. Automated defenses, lethal protocols. The 4th man didn't stand a chance. Back in the penthouse, Jaehoon had Min Seo on the ground. Blood on both their faces, both breathing hard. It's over, Jaehoon said. Your team is dead, Sienna's alive, you failed. Min Seo smiled through broken teeth. Did I? Look at what you've become. A man who faked a woman's death, who imprisoned her, who turned into exactly the monster I always knew you were. I'm the monster who saved her. You're the monster who destroyed her. Min Seo coughed blood. You think she'll ever forgive you, ever love you? You've taken everything from her, just like you took everything from me. Maybe, Jaehoon said quietly, but she's alive, and that's all that matters. He pulled out his phone, called Sienna. "Are you okay?" Her voice came back, breathless but steady. "4 bodies. I'm covered in blood that's not mine. But yeah, I'm okay. I'm coming for you." "No," her voice was firm. "Clean up your mess first, I'll clean up mine." "Sienna." "I mean it, Jae-hoon." And there was something new in her voice, something hard, something changed. "I just killed 3 men to stay alive. I think I can handle a few more hours alone." Jae-hoon looked down at Min-seo. "What do I do with you?" "Kill me, it's what you're good at." "No," Jae-hoon stood. "That's the easy way. You want me to suffer? I'll suffer. Every day. Knowing I turned the woman I love into a killer. Knowing I became exactly what you said I was." "So what then?" "So you live, but not here." Jae-hoon made a call. "I'm sending you somewhere far away, somewhere you can't hurt anyone else. You'll have money, a new identity, a chance to start over." "Why would you?" "Because your sister wouldn't want this, any of this." Jae-hoon's voice broke. "And I owe her that much, to make sure her brother doesn't die the way she did, violently, senselessly." Min-seo stared at him for a long moment, then started crying. Not rage tears, grief tears. "I hate you," he whispered. "I know. I'll always hate you. I know that too. But thank you for not making my nephew grow up knowing his uncle died seeking revenge." 3 hours later, Jae-hoon arrived at the safe house. Found Sienna sitting on the terrace, cleaned up, changed clothes, staring at the sunrise. 4 body bags lay in the driveway. "You called the cleaners," she observed without looking at him. "I did." "Good." Silence. Then, "How many people have you killed, Jae-hoon?" He didn't hesitate. 17, personally, hundreds more by order. "And how do you live with it?" "I don't, not really. I just keep moving forward because stopping means drowning." Sienna finally looked at him. "I killed 3 people tonight." "I know." "I didn't hesitate. I didn't feel guilty. I just did what needed to be done." "That's survival." "That's who I am now." Her eyes were hard, haunted. "The woman who could do that. The woman you created when you faked my death and put me in this cage." "I'm sorry." "Don't," she stood. "Don't apologize, because we both know you'd do it again. And you know what the really twisted part is." "What?" "So would I." Jae-hoon went very still. "What?" "If someone asked me right now, would you rather be dead, tortured according to those 47 pages? Or would you rather be here, alive, blood on your hands, trapped in a life you didn't choose?" She moved closer to him. "I'd choose this, every time. I'd choose survival, even if it costs me everything I used to be." "Sienna, you asked me to choose, stay or go, after Min-seo was dealt with." Her eyes locked on his. "I'm choosing. And I'm staying." Jae-hoon's breath caught. "Why?" "Because out there I'm dead. In here with you I'm alive, broken, changed, dangerous, but alive." She touched his face. "And because somewhere in the last 8 weeks, I stopped seeing you as my jailer and started seeing you as the only person in the world who knows who I really am now. The woman who killed 3 men. The woman who survived." She paused. "The woman who understands what you've been trying to tell me all along, that love in your world isn't gentle. It's not kind. It's violent and possessive, and sometimes it destroys you while saving you." "That's not love." "Maybe not." Her lips curved in something that wasn't quite a smile. "But it's all we have, and I'd rather have this, twisted and dark and real, than nothing at all." 6 months later, Sienna stood at the window of a new penthouse. Not in Seoul, not in the mountains. Hong Kong, where dead women could walk freely because no one was looking for ghosts. Where Mina Han, her new identity, could breathe without fear. She heard Jae-hoon enter, felt his presence before his hands settled on her shoulders. "Your mother's birthday is tomorrow," he said quietly. Sienna's chest tightened. "I know." I had flowers sent to her, from an anonymous admirer of Sienna's work. The card says her daughter would be proud of how strong she's been. A tear slipped down Sienna's cheek. "That's cruel." "That's kindness." She thinks someone remembers her daughter, that Sienna mattered to more than just her. But I can never tell her the truth. No, Jaehoon's voice was heavy. You can't. They stood in silence, watching the city lights. Then Sienna spoke. Do you ever regret it? Really, truly regret what you did? Jaehoon turned her to face him. Every single day, and I'd do it again every single day. That's the most fucked up thing about us, isn't it? Sienna's voice cracked. We're both trapped in a choice that destroyed us, but we can't imagine choosing differently. Yes. She touched his face. I hate you. I know. I love you. Jaehoon's breath caught. Sienna. I love you in the most broken, twisted way possible. Tears streamed down her face. I love you the way a prisoner loves the guard who brings her food. The way a bird with clipped wings loves the cage that keeps her safe from predators. I love you, and I hate that I love you, and I can't separate the two anymore. Jaehoon pulled her close. I don't deserve that. No, you don't. But I'll take it anyway. I know you will. That's what makes you dangerous. They stood there, two broken people holding each other in a penthouse that cost more than most people earn in a lifetime. A gilded cage with a view of the world they could never truly be part of. If you could go back, Sienna whispered, back to that coffee shop where we met 3 years ago, would you walk away, never hire me, let me live my normal life? Jaehoon was quiet for a long moment. Then, no, I'd still hire you, still watch you, still fall in love with you, still fake your death to save you. Even knowing what it would cost both of us. Even knowing I'd turn you into someone you don't recognize, that you'd kill to survive, that you'd hate me and love me and never be free. His voice broke. Because a world where you exist, even like this, is better than a world where you don't. Sienna pulled back, looked at him with eyes that had seen too much, survived too much. Then I guess we deserve each other. Maybe that's all love is for people like us. Not happiness, not peace, just mutual destruction that we choose over loneliness. That's the saddest thing I've ever heard. That's the truest thing I've ever said. Later that night, Sienna sat at the piano in their penthouse. A Steinway, custom, the same one from her childhood home that her mother had sold to pay bills. Jaehoon had tracked it down, bought it back, had it restored and delivered. Because that's what love looked like in his language. Not flowers, not poetry, but impossible gestures that said, I've been paying attention to your pain. She played Debussy, Claire de Lune, the song her mother used to play. And Jaehoon sat in the shadows watching, always watching. Do you think she'd forgive me? Sienna asked without stopping her playing. My mother, if she knew I was alive, if she knew I chose to stay dead rather than come home. I think she'd want you alive, however that looks. But would she forgive me for loving the man who killed me? Silence. No, Jaehoon admitted. She probably wouldn't. Good, Sienna's fingers moved over the keys, because I don't forgive myself either. The music filled the penthouse. Beautiful and haunting, and infinitely sad. Just like them. 1 year later. Sienna was pregnant. She stared at the test in her hand, her world tilting. Because a child changed everything. A child meant she wasn't just a dead woman living in hiding. She was bringing another life into this darkness, this cage. A child who would never know their grandmother, never have a real identity, never be truly free. Tell me what you're thinking, Jaehoon said, finding her on the terrace at dawn. She handed him the test. Watched his face transform, shock, joy, terror. I can't do this, she whispered. I can't bring a child into this life. Then we'll change the life. How? I'm dead, Jaehoon. Our child will be born to a ghost and a criminal. What kind of future is that? It's the future where they're alive, where they're loved, where they know their mother survived impossible things to give them a chance. Sienna turned to face him. I need you to promise me something. Anything. If something happens to me, if this life catches up to us, you'll give them a choice. Our child. You'll let them choose who they want to be. You won't trap them the way you trapped me. Jaehoon's hands shook as he cupped her face. I promise. Swear it on everything you've sacrificed, on your twisted, fucked up love for me. Swear you'll set them free if they want it. I swear. Tears streamed down his face. I swear on your life, on our child's life, on my own damned soul. I will never cage them the way I caged you. Sienna kissed him. Not a gentle kiss, not a romantic kiss, but a kiss that tasted like tears and resignation, and something that might have been forgiveness. Then we'll do this, she said against his lips. We'll bring this child into our broken world, and we'll teach them that survival sometimes means sacrifice, that love sometimes means pain, that freedom is an illusion, but life, messy, complicated, trapped life, is always worth fighting for. 5 years later, their daughter was 4 years old. Her name was Hope, because irony was all they had left. She had Sienna's eyes and Jaehoon's intensity. She spoke 3 languages, played piano, painted watercolors of places she'd never been. And she had no idea that her mother was supposed to be dead. Mommy, Hope asked one morning, why don't we visit Grandma? Sienna's heart shattered and reformed in the same breath. Because Grandma lives very far away, sweetheart, and it's not safe for us to travel right now. But she misses you. How did you explain to a 4-year-old that her grandmother mourned her mother? That love sometimes meant staying away. I miss her too, Sienna said, pulling Hope close. Every single day. That night, after Hope was asleep, Sienna found Jaehoon on the terrace. He was holding his phone, looking at a photo. Sienna's mother, gray hair now, older, standing at a gravestone that bore Sienna's name. She visits every week, Jaehoon said quietly. Brings flowers, talks to the headstone like you're still there. Stop, Sienna whispered. Please stop. You need to see this, need to understand what your freedom cost. I know what it cost. Do you? Jaehoon turned to her. Because I watch you with Hope, and I see you dying inside every time she asks about family. Every time she wonders why we don't have photos from before she was born. Every time she looks at you with innocent eyes and you have to lie. Then what do you want me to do? Sienna's voice rose. Go back, resurrect from the dead. Explain to my mother that I've been alive for 6 years and never contacted her because I fell in love with my kidnapper. I want you to know that I see you suffering, and it's killing me. Sienna's anger deflated. We're both dying, Jaehoon. Slowly. This life we built, it's beautiful and terrible, and it's destroying us from the inside out. Would you change it? She looked back toward Hope's room. I don't know anymore. I love our daughter more than breathing. But some nights I lie awake and wonder if bringing her into this was the cruelest thing we've ever done. Or the most human. What's the difference? Jaehoon pulled her close. I don't have an answer for that, but I know that 6 years ago I made a choice. Your life over your happiness, and I'd make it again, even knowing it would lead to this. To you hating yourself. To our daughter growing up in shadows. To us dying slowly in a cage we built together. That's not love, Jaehoon. No, it's not. He pressed his forehead to hers. It's something darker, something more selfish, but it's all I know how to give. If you could have watched me die instead, Sienna whispered, would that have been kinder? For you, maybe. For me, never. So you saved me for yourself. Yes. That simple honesty broke something in her. I wish I could hate you for that. You do hate me for that. Not enough, she kissed him desperately. Never enough. On Hope's 18th birthday, Sienna gave her a letter. Don't open it until you're ready, she said. But when you are, everything will make sense. What is it? The truth about who I am, who you are, why we live the way we do. Inside the envelope. My darling Hope. My name isn't Mina Han, it's Sienna Carter, and before you were born, I died. This is the story of a dead woman who loved too dangerously, of a man who saved her by destroying her, and of the beautiful life that grew from ashes. This is the story of how survival sometimes looks like prison, how love sometimes looks like cruelty, and how the most honest thing I can tell you is this. I don't regret it, any of it, not the death, not the cage, not the life we've built in shadows. Because it gave me you. And you were worth every sacrifice, every lie, every moment of suffocating in a gilded cage. Your father promised to give you what he couldn't give me, choice. So here it is, the truth, the names, the resources to start over if you want. You can walk away from us, from this life. You can be free in ways I never was. Or you can stay and build your own cage, your own compromise between survival and happiness. I won't tell you which to choose. I'll only tell you what I learned. Sometimes love is a trap. Sometimes survival costs everything. Sometimes the right choice is the one that destroys you. And sometimes, just sometimes, destruction is the most honest form of love there is. I love you. Your father loves you. We're both broken people who made you from our ruins. And you, my darling, are the most beautiful thing to ever grow from such darkness. Choose wisely. Choose freely. Choose what we couldn't. All my love, your mother Sienna. 20 years after the fake death. Sienna stood at a window in yet another city. Grayer now, older, still beautiful, still trapped. She chose to leave, Jae-hoon said from behind her. I know. She's using the resources, building a life under her real name, away from us. Good. Are you? Sienna turned to look at the man who destroyed and saved her in equal measure. Am I what? Good, okay, at peace with any of this. She considered lying, then decided the truth was easier. No, I'm not at peace, I'll never be at peace. She moved closer to him, but I'm alive, and some days that's enough. And other days, I still hate you for saving me. Jae-hoon smiled sadly. At least you're consistent. At least I'm honest. They stood together, watching another sunset in another city where they didn't belong. Two ghosts haunting their own life. If you could do it over, Jae-hoon started. Don't, Sienna cut him off. Don't ask that question because we both know the answer, and we both know it doesn't change anything. We'd do it all again. Every twisted, painful moment. That's love. That's insanity. Maybe they're the same thing. Sienna leaned against him. And in the silence, they didn't need to say what they both knew. That this was there forever. This cage, this compromise, this dark, suffocating, beautiful prison they'd built together. That she would hate him and love him until her last breath. That he would choose her life over her happiness until his last breath. That their daughter had escaped what they couldn't. And that was the only redemption they'd ever get. Do you think she'll forgive us? Sienna asked quietly. Hope, for bringing her into this, for being who we are. I think she already has, by leaving, by choosing freedom. Jae-hoon's voice was thick. By being braver than we ever were. We gave her that, the choice. We did. Then maybe we're not completely damned. Jae-hoon kissed the top of her head. We're exactly as damned as we deserve to be. Good, Sienna closed her eyes. Because I don't trust happiness anymore, but damnation, that feels honest. In the end, there was no happy ending. No redemption, no escape. Just two people who destroyed each other to stay alive. Just a dead woman and the man who killed her, learning to breathe in a world where they didn't exist. Just love, if you could call it that, in its darkest, most honest form. And somehow, despite everything, it was enough. If this story broke you the way it broke them, subscribe for more tailies where love isn't gentle and survival isn't pretty. Drop a comment telling me, would you have stayed or would you have run? Would you choose life in a cage or death with dignity? Because I genuinely want to know if you understand what Sienna chose, and whether you think she was brave or broken for choosing it. Thanks for staying until the end, for witnessing this darkness, for not looking away. Some love stories end in sunsets. This one ends in shadows. And maybe that's the most honest ending of all. If this story broke you the way it broke them, subscribe for more tailies where love isn't gentle and survival isn't pretty. Drop a comment telling me, would you have stayed or would you have run? Would you choose life in a cage or death with dignity? Because I genuinely want to know if you understand what Sienna chose, and whether you think she was brave or broken for choosing it. Thanks for staying until the end, for witnessing this darkness, for not looking away. Some love stories end in sunsets. This one ends in shadows. And maybe that's the most honest ending of all.